Hi, I'm Cher Pendarvis. In this video, we will work with texture painting. With the groundbreaking new texture painting features in Painter 2017, many incredible texture brush effects are possible. I'm going to turn this layer on right now, and you can see the subtle aged effect that I've created using the texture brushes and a custom texture on my painting, Moon Over Linux. With texture painting, you can brush complex textures onto your art and limitless looks are possible from modern to vintage. In this lesson, we will begin with a short overview of texture painting and then we'll add an aged look to my existing painting. First, let's have a look at some of the new tools that are important for texture painting. You'll see right here a palette drawer for texture painting. It includes the texture brushes and the texture libraries and the texture panel. And right below we have transform textures, which allows us to scale our textures as we work. In addition to the default painter textures that are in the library, you can also create your own textures, as I did for the ones that you have here. I took photographs and imported them into Painter using the import texture command that you see here, the arrow button. There's also a pop-up menu on the side of the textures panel and texture library panel called import texture. The texture brushes are organized into two categories, texture cover and texture source blending. The brushstroke examples shown here show both. On the left, texture cover is shown, and on the right, texture source blending is shown. Let's work with the brushes. Click here to open the brush selector, and if you look down near the bottom, texture cover is chosen. And on the right, you'll see the airbrush is chosen. The airbrush paints with a soft spray of the chosen texture. The airbrush can also paint over existing imagery as shown here. The dynamic speckle color control paints with color chosen in the color panel using the luminosity of the chosen texture. And using this brush, you can also paint over existing imagery. Now let's paint with a couple of the texture source blending brushes. Choose texture source blending in the brush selector and the basic color control variant. As you see, it doesn't lay down color on an empty image, but you can lay down a beautiful brush stroke on an underlying image. Using color from the color panel, luminosity from the selected texture, and blend this brush stroke with the underlying image. Now let's paint with the stencil paper pastel smudge variant. Like the basic color control, the pastel smudge does not lay down color on an empty canvas, but it does paint a beautiful pastel stroke on existing imagery using the luminosity of the texture and a little bit of the color chosen in the color panel. And you can also smudge the texture with this particular pastel brush. Have fun exploring the other texture cover and texture source blending brushes in Painter 2017. Now I'd like to show you how I created this aged painted look on my painting. I'm going to turn this layer off to show the original painting, and I'm going to target the canvas. We're going to choose Select All, Control Command A, and we're going to choose Edit, Copy, and Edit, Paste in Place, Control Command V. So now we have a new layer to work with. We're going to make sure that layer is targeted. The brush that I use to paint the texture on the layer is the Texture Source Blending Stencil Texture Bristle Texture Luminance. Choose the brush tool. I increase the size of the brush, and we're going to brush very lightly in this area up here to bring forth some of the texture. Magically, I can bring the texture onto my painting. I'm painting this on a layer rather than on the image canvas so that I have the additional flexibility of opacity and blend modes. Now I'm not going to paint the texture on the entire painting. If you paint the texture over just a portion of your painting, you're going to achieve a more natural look. So now I'm going to reduce the opacity. As you see, the texture and the smudges make the painting look aged. The default method allows us to create a faded look. If I were to choose a different composite method, say for instance hard light, then we would get a more intense look. But I chose the default composite method for an aged look. I also want to mention the texture that I used is a photograph that I took of worn masonry. You can get a similar look to mine by using this crackle texture. That's in the Painter default library, and you see the cracks coming through right here. And now for another look at my final aged piece with the faded areas of cracked paint. Enjoy exploring and experimenting with your own aged looks, and make sure to try out all of the texture brushes in Painter 2017. Happy painting!